Hello again, and hello green grapes, welcome back. So we've just finished the introduction, foreword and synopsis for In Search of the Miraculous by Marianne Williamson and Jacob Needleman, and I thought, as it was just a short only a few pages of material, I thought I would share some more introductory material on In Search of the Miraculous for anyone who's interested and wants to absorb as much information as they can. And with that being said, although the information and the documentation of In Search of the Miraculous is important, the practice of the exercises are as important and probably way more important. We must practice and bring into our lives what we learn through these books. But in this stream, I'm going to read Ouspensky's opening remarks from The Fourth Way, and then a letter that Maurice Nicoll writes early on in the Psychological Commentaries, which is sort of the publication of all of his correspondences with his students. But early on, there's a couple of introductory letters, and then there's an essay titled The Fourth Way. So I'll be reading those. Forgive the quality of the text that I'll put on the screen, because I've sort of created my own PDF. I've just captured the images and tried to tidy them up, change the colouring and contrast to make them easier on the eye. But again, they're not a PDF that I've took from online. I've created it myself, so forgive me for that. And as always, if you're enjoying the content here at Book Club, like the video, subscribe to the channel, share the show with your friends, and get them involved in our study of the Fourth Way so we can all wake up together and raise our consciousness. But for now, I'm going to read Ouspensky and Nicoll on the Fourth Way. And this is the foreword to the Fourth Way, Ouspensky's Fourth Way, and it says, when P.D. Ouspensky was asked if he intended to publish his lectures, he answered, "What is the use? The most important is not the lectures, but the questions and answers." This book consists of verbatim extracts from talks and answers to questions given by Ouspensky between 1921 and 1946. Chapter 1 is a general survey of the fundamental ideas, which in subsequent chapters are amplified by subject in the specific order followed by Ouspensky himself. To achieve this order, some of the material has been taken out of its chronological sequence, but in no case has there been any alteration of phrasing or meaning. So again, we read there, questions and answers given to Ouspensky between 1921 and 46, so many years of his lectures and questions and answers. So again, I think there may be a few books with his lectures, but as Ouspensky says there, the important thing is the questions and answers, which is what we have here. And we begin with not with a question, but with a statement from Ouspensky on what the Fourth Way consists of. Before I begin to explain to you in a general way what this system is about, and to talk about our methods, I want particularly to impress on your minds that the most important ideas and principles of the system do not belong to me. This is chiefly what makes them valuable, because if they belonged to me, they would be like all other theories invented by ordinary minds. They would give only a subjective view of things. When I began to write a new model of the universe in 1907, I formulated to myself, as many other people have done before and since, that behind the surface of the life which we know lies something much bigger and more important. And I said to myself then that until we know more about what lies behind, all our knowledge of life and of ourselves is really negligible. I remember one conversation at that time when I said, if it were possible to accept as proven that consciousness, or as I should call it now, intelligence, can manifest itself apart from the physical body, many other things could be proved. Only it cannot be taken as proved. I realized that manifestations of supranormal psychology, such as thought transference, clairvoyance, the possibility of knowing the future, of looking back into the past, and so on, have not been proved. So I tried to find a method of studying these things and worked on that line for several years. I found some interesting things in that way, but the results were very elusive, and though several experiments were successful, it was almost impossible to repeat them. I came to two conclusions in the course of these experiments. First, that we do not know enough about ordinary psychology. We cannot study supernormal psychology because we do not know normal psychology. Secondly, I came to the conclusion that certain real knowledge exists, that there may be schools which know exactly what we want to know, but that for some reason they are hidden, and this knowledge is hidden. So I began to look for these schools. I travelled in Europe, Egypt, India, Ceylon to look for these schools. So I began to look for these schools. I travelled in Europe, Egypt, India, Ceylon, Turkey, and the Near East. But it was really later, when I had already finished these travels, that I met in Russia during the war a group of people who were studying a certain system, which came originally from Eastern schools. This system began with the study of psychology, exactly as I had realized it must begin. The chief idea of this system was that we do not use even a small part of our powers and our forces. We have in us, so to speak, a very big and very fine organization, only we do not know how to use it. In this group they employed certain oriental metaphors, and they told me that we have in us a large house full of beautiful furniture with a library and many other rooms, but we live in the basement and the kitchen and cannot get out of them. If people tell us about what this house has upstairs, we do not believe them, or we laugh at them, or we call it superstition or fairy tales or fables. This system can be divided into study of the world on certain new principles and study of man. The study of the world and the study of man include in themselves a kind of special language. We try to use ordinary words, the same words as we use in ordinary conversation, but we attach a slightly different and more precise meaning to them. The study of the world, the study of the universe, is based on the study of some fundamental laws which are not generally known or recognized in science. The two chief laws are the law of 3 and the law of 7, which will be explained later. Included in this, and necessary from this point of view, is the principle of scale, a principle which does not enter into ordinary scientific study, or enters very little. The study of man is closely connected with the idea of evolution of man, but the evolution of man must be understood in a slightly different way from the ordinary. Ordinarily, the word evolution, applied either to man or to anything else, presupposes a kind of mechanical evolution. I mean that certain things, by certain known or unknown laws, transform into other things, and these other things transform into still others, and so on. But from the point of view of this system, there is no such evolution at all. I do not speak in general, but specifically of man. The evolution of man, if it occurs, can only be the result of knowledge and effort. As long as man knows only what he can know in the ordinary way, there is no evolution for him, and there never was any evolution for him. Serious study begins in this system with the study of psychology, that is to say, with the study of oneself. Because psychology cannot be studied, as astronomy can, outside oneself. A man has to study himself. When I was told that, I saw at once that we do not have any methods of studying ourselves, and already have many wrong ideas about ourselves. So I realized that we must get rid of wrong ideas about ourselves, and at the same time find methods of studying ourselves. Perhaps you realize how difficult it is to define what is meant by psychology. There are so many meanings attached to the same words in different systems that it is difficult to have a general definition. So we begin by defining psychology as study of oneself. You have to learn certain methods and principles, and according to these principles and using these methods, you will try to see yourselves from a new point of view. If we begin to study ourselves, we first of all come up against one word which we use more than any other, and that is the word I. We say I am doing, I am sitting, I feel, I like, I dislike, and so on. This is our chief illusion. For the principal mistake we make about ourselves is that we consider ourselves one. We always speak about ourselves as I, and we suppose that we refer to the same thing all the time, when in reality we are divided into hundreds and hundreds of different I's. At one moment when I say I, one part of me is speaking, and at another moment when I say I, it is quite another I speaking. We do not know that we have not one I but many different I's connected with our feelings and desires and have no controlling I. These I's change all the time. One suppresses another, one replaces another, and all this struggle makes up our inner life. I's which we see in ourselves are divided into several groups. Some of these groups are legitimate, they belong to right divisions of man, and some of them are quite artificial and are created by insufficient knowledge and by certain imaginary ideas that man has about himself. To begin self-study, it is necessary to study methods of self-observation, but that again must be based on a certain understanding of the division of our functions. Our ordinary idea of these divisions is quite wrong. We know the difference between intellectual and emotional functions. For instance, when we discuss things, think about them, compare them, invent explanations, or find real explanations, this is all intellectual work, whereas love, hate, fear, suspicion, and so on are emotional. But very often when trying to observe ourselves, we mix even intellectual and emotional functions. When we really feel, we call it thinking, and when we think, we call it feeling. But in the course of study, we shall learn in what way they differ. For instance, there is enormous difference in speed, but we shall speak more about that later. Then there are two other functions which no system of ordinary psychology divides and understands in the right way: instinctive function and moving function. Instinctive refers to the inner work of the organism: digestion of food, beating of the heart, breathing. These are instinctive functions. To instinctive functions belong also ordinary senses: sight, hearing, smell, taste, touch, the feeling of cold and warmth, things like that. And this is all really. Of outer movements, only simple reflexes belong to instinctive function, because more complicated reflexes belong to moving function. It is very easy to distinguish between instinctive and moving functions. We do not have to learn anything that belongs to instinctive function. We are born with the capacity to use all the instinctive functions. Moving functions, on the other hand, all have to be learned. A child learns to walk, to write, and so on. There is a very great difference between the two functions, since there is nothing inherent in moving functions, and instinctive functions are all inherent. So, in self-observation, it is necessary, first of all, to divide these four functions and to classify at once everything that you observe, saying, this is intellectual function, this is emotional function, and so on. If you practice this observation for some time, you may notice some strange things. For instance, you will find that what is really difficult in observing is that you forget about it. You start to observe and your emotions connect with some kind of thought, and you forget about self-observation. Again, after some time, if you continue this effort to observe, which is a new function not used in the same way in ordinary life, you will notice another interesting thing, that generally you do not remember yourself. If you could be aware of yourself all the time, then you would be able to observe all the time, or in any case, as long as you liked. But because you cannot remember yourself, you cannot concentrate, and this is why you will have to admit that you have no will. If you could remember yourself, you would have will, and could do what you liked. But you cannot remember yourself, you cannot be aware of yourself, and so you have no will. You may sometimes have will for a short time, but it turns to something else, and you forget about it. This is the situation, the state of being, the state from which we have to start self-study. But very soon, if you continue, you will come to the conclusion that almost from the very beginning of self-study, you have to correct certain things in yourself which are not right, to arrange certain things which are not in their right places. The system has an explanation for this. We are made in such a way that we can live in 4 states of consciousness, but such as we are, we use only 2, one when we are asleep, and the other when we are what we call awake, that is to say, in this present state when we can talk, listen, read, write, and so on. But these are only 2 out of 4 possible states. The third state of consciousness is very strange. If people explain to us what the third state of consciousness is, we begin to think that we have it. The third state can be called self-consciousness, and most people, if asked, say, certainly we are conscious. A sufficient time or repeated and frequent efforts of self-observation is necessary before we really recognize the fact that we are not conscious, that we are conscious only potentially. If we are asked, we say, yes, I am, and for that moment we are, but the next moment we cease to remember and are not conscious. So in the process of self-observation, we realize that we are not in the third state of consciousness, that we live only in two. We live either in sleep or in a waking state which, in the system, is called relative consciousness. The fourth state, which is called objective consciousness, is inaccessible to us because it can only be reached through self-consciousness, that is, by becoming aware of oneself first, so that much later we may manage to reach the objective state of consciousness. So, at the same time as self-observing, we try to be aware of ourselves by holding the sensation of I am here, nothing more. And this is the fact that all Western psychology, without the smallest exception, has missed. Although many people came very near to it, they did not recognize the importance of this fact and did not realize that the state of man as he is can be changed, that man can remember himself if he tries for a long time. It is not a question of a day or a month. It is a very long study, and a study of how to remove obstacles. Because we do not remember ourselves, we are not conscious of ourselves, owing to many wrong functions in our machine, and all these functions have to be corrected and put right. When most of these functions are put right, these periods of self-remembering will become longer and longer, and if they become sufficiently long, we shall acquire two new functions. With self-consciousness, which is the third state of consciousness, we acquire a function which is called higher emotional, although it is equally intellectual, because on this level there is no difference between intellectual and emotional, such as there is on the ordinary level. And when we come to the state of objective consciousness, we acquire another function, which is called higher mental. Phenomena of what I call supernormal psychology belong to these two functions, and this is why when I made those experiments 25 years ago, I came to the conclusion that experimental work is impossible, because it is not a question of experiment, but of changing one's state of consciousness. And that's the end of hello there, Ashira and Audrey. And that is Ouspensky's introductory remarks to the fourth way ideas, and I think it can be quite uncomfortable for people new to these ideas to be told all the time that, that we only exist in potential. We're not, we have no being, we have no will, we have no things, and if you listen to certain philosophers, they talk about determinism and all these things, and I suppose Gurdjieff is asserting that until we acquire being and become real beings, we don't have any free will, because we just react to life. And Ouspensky portrays there the different states of consciousness and the potential of man to become conscious. And so, yes, that is the opening remarks in the fourth way. And again, the book is laid out in question and answer format. So it's sort of, if you read In Search of the Miraculous first and then go to the fourth way, you may come across a certain question that you have thought of, and then Ouspensky answers it in the fourth way book. And now we will move on to Maurice Nicoll's commentaries and his thoughts on the fourth way. This letter was sent in Birdlip, May the 4th, 1941. The fourth way. It is very necessary at this moment to understand something of what the fourth way means. There are four ways of work on oneself. We belong to the fourth way, which is the most difficult way of all, because it must be practiced in the midst of life. The way of fakir, that is the first way. The way of monk, that is the second way. The way of yogi, that is the third way, is not our way. We have to speak on the small scale of ourselves. But the point is that we are, even on this small scale, trying to follow the fourth way, which comes down into external life always when there is a period of special disorder and chaos. And so we could argue about the current form of the world, and yes, it certainly is a special period of disorder and chaos. Now I would like to say to you all that some of you do not understand the idea of the fourth way. For example, you appear to me to expect that the conditions that have existed at one time must or will always exist. This is quite wrong. The fourth way must always be related to the varying circumstances of life and can never become fixed and habitual. Suddenly it may be necessary to alter the whole external scheme of things. I want especially at this moment to have around me people who understand this and who can relate themselves to different conditions and still maintain in themselves all the principles and ideas of the work. We have no idea how things will go in the future, but we understand that the work must continue in the future, and that means that people must be able to adjust themselves to completely different external conditions and yet maintain the sense and feeling of the work. In the fourth way, the first main achievement is to become number 4 man, that is, balanced man or all-sided. Now, if some of you have formed an idea of what the external form of the work is from past associations, and you find yourself confronted with an entirely new external state of affairs and become negative, you are really useless to me insofar as the fourth way is concerned. You must learn that every change in the work externally is always useful to you, whatever form it takes, and all of you must be prepared to follow the work in its changing outer manifestations, and at all moments maintain a clear inner attitude towards it. At the present moment it is quite possible to reproduce the situation that existed in Essex. The present headquarters of our branch of the work are now situated in the full glare of publicity. That is to say, the 2 houses that we have taken are literally on the highway, especially the house in Birdlip itself, which is right in the village. For that reason it is quite impossible to live our life as we did in Essex at the farm, and everyone must realize this and adjust himself to circumstances, and also everyone must realize that we are in, so to speak, a foreign country, and particularly a conservative country, and must contribute to making a reasonable and normal impression on people. Under such circumstances we cannot have the same external life as before, but I see no reason why people who visit us should not understand that this quite small difficulty can be overcome, and that apart from it everything is exactly the same as before. As I said a long time ago to you and repeated it several times, that the work does not necessarily include coming to the farm, and that the farm was distinct in a sense from the teaching of the work. The work exists through everyone's attitude towards it, and no matter what the external situation may be, it should make no difference to work in this sense. I'm sorry that I have to say this, but it is necessary to do so. For all that I know, we may find ourselves again in quite different circumstances, which again will require a proper understanding, and then again, and then again. People must understand that they are in the fourth way, and that they must always be able to be all things to all people, and to develop every side of themselves in relation to society, and to all forms of external life, to a reasonable point. Otherwise they do not understand the idea of the fourth way, which maintains itself right in the midst of life, amongst everything that goes on, adjusting itself and yet always maintaining itself internally. The fourth way is and must always be the most flexible of all, but it requires a most flexible inner understanding, and unless a person can be flexible and yet maintain the feeling of the work, he is a rather difficult subject in connection with this line of work. Every change in circumstances provides a very useful chance for everyone to learn something. When I have sufficient people around me whom I can trust, in the sense of their being able to deal normally with every kind of person they meet, and with every situation in life, I will feel that I am able to extend the work in the way that I wish to extend it eventually. And here I will mind you of one meaning of mechanicalness in the work. If you cannot relate to one side or another in life, you must make this one of your aims. There is not a single thing in life about which a man in the fourth way should not be knowledgeable or capable of maintaining himself in connection with it. This fourth way is not romantic, and it is no use having romantic feelings about the farm in Essex. This fourth way is quite ruthless, and as soon as something is finished, that is, gives no longer any real value, it is abandoned. By this I do not mean that we cannot go back to the farm, but that this is a great chance for everyone to adjust himself to the external form and physical situation of the work at the moment. This applies equally to those who cannot come here and to those who can. I'll be very glad if you would all try to understand what I mean, because it is important to draw attention to this point, owing to the fact that so often everyone begins to settle down after a time into some form of the fourth way work, which he thinks is going to go on, just like that. Unfortunately, such mental and emotional habits can be formed. I once said to G, "Why don't you build more solidly?" We were building a theatre. He said, "This is only temporary. In a very short time everything will be different. Everyone will be elsewhere. Nothing can be built permanently at this moment." So it is necessary for everybody to understand in a way what this means. Many times G had no work externally, that is, no place, no habitation. Everything seemed to have been dissolved away from the external or sensory point of view, to have vanished. Yet, as you know, the work went on and was finally transmitted to this country. And yet this had nothing to do with the external form of the work, with the actual house or situation and so on, and in view of what G told me privately, I fancy that we can have no permanent home for the work, and that we shall have to adjust ourselves to every kind of situation in the future. But all of you who have heard the teaching over a sufficient time should be able now to be quite tranquil about change in the external form or the external demands of the work, and to relate yourself instantly to them from the work point of view. The trouble is that things become mechanical, and it is necessary for a shock to be given so that things are no longer quite mechanical. But the work continues in the same way and speaks with the same voice and gives the same force to those who acknowledge and practice it. I must add that the centre of gravity of this talk to you lies in the meaning of what is called the fourth way. We are not fakirs holding out our arms year after year. We are not monks living in monasteries. We are not yogis going to remote schools or sitting and meditating in caves in the Himalayas. We belong to what is called the fourth way, which is right down in life. So we have to work in the midst of life, surrounded by all the misfortunes of life, and eventually life becomes our teacher. That is to say, we have to practice non-identifying in the midst of the happenings of life. We have to practice self-remembering in the midst of affairs, and we have to notice and separate ourselves from our negative emotions in the midst of all hurts and smarts in daily life. And for that reason it is said that a man who follows the fourth way must become number 4 man, that is, a man who has developed his centres. It means a man who can be all things to all men, and it means a man who has developed all sides of himself, so that he can meet with every situation reasonable, with every class, with every kind of person, with every point of view, with every theory, with every practical thing or theoretical thing or philosophical thing up to a certain point. From one point of view he is a man of the world. It is wrong to say this, but it probably gives the first idea of what number 4 man is. Number 4 man does not really mean a man of the world. It means something deeper than this, but certainly it includes this. That is to say, it means that a person is able to meet with all the events and situations of life in a reasonable way, and is not a fool about life and people. There are many things to learn from ordinary life that everybody ought to learn, and in view of the idea of number 4 man, all these things become interesting. This person mechanically hates this side of life, or that person mechanically hates that side of life. Actually, a man must get his full development from life in conjunction with the work in order to reach the stage of number 4 man. For no man can become number 4 man unless the work illuminates him, and at the same time no man can become number 4 man unless he relates to himself to all sides of life. Ask yourself, all of you, in what sides of life you are very underdeveloped, And here I simply mean ordinary external life. Would you be able to take charge of an army suddenly? Would you be able to run a hotel? Would you be able to talk effectively to the Prime Minister? Could you produce a play or sail a ship or give an important dance to keep quiet and know what to do? Could you give a good criticism of a book? Could you maintain yourself in conversation amongst ordinary educated people? Although all this is not important and no one must take it literally, everyone must have ideas of what number 4 man means, because number 4 man does not mean what I have said exactly. It means the attainment of a quite wonderful all-sidedness, so that although you have never talked to the Prime Minister, when the moment comes you can do it from your inner development and your inner strength. The fourth way lies in life, and people must be strong enough to maintain it in their wills and their understanding, because it has no temples or churches or ritual, only rules. So therefore, please understand that if external conditions of the fourth way change for you and even change again and again, you must always try to keep your balance and accept the new conditions as work, and believe that however much I like a man or woman personally, I cannot do anything if change of external circumstances make him or her negative in the work. And I will add this quite simple sentence. Please do not think, some of you, that the work means the farm. The work is not an external thing lying at the farm. Often people connect themselves with the work through outer sensory images so that they forget even what the work is about. The work is not a place, the work is not a thing that you can touch or handle, the work is not in France or England or America or in any place in the world. The work is in your hearts and in your own understanding, and wherever a man has to go, the work can always go with him, if he maintains the right attitude towards it. The work is only kept alive by a man's own efforts. Only if he is willing to receive it can the work touch a man, and it is then slowly begins to transform him. Therefore, the work is not a space, nor even in time. It is in something that we do not understand, which is neither space nor time, place nor movement, for which a word was invented long ago, a word that is always completely misunderstood, called eternity. So that was Maurice Nicoll's remarks on the fourth way, and as you could probably tell clearly there, and it's reflected in Ouspensky's passage that I just read earlier, and this is a very powerful aspect of the fourth way or the work, is that it's to be practiced in your current life where you find the work. So wherever we find the work, we have to use life as a teacher, like Maurice Nicoll says there. We have to use life as a teacher, and we have to practice the work or train the work or remember ourselves and try and raise our consciousness in our very lives that we have now. If you have an annoying work colleague maybe, then that's an opportunity for work. If your children misbehave at school, that's an opportunity to work. If you're finding difficulty in beginning a new habit or stopping an old habit, that's an opportunity to do the work, to observe yourself, to observe the mechanicalness, particularly in habitual behaviors. They're mechanical. That's what habitual means, right? It happens mechanically without our consciousness, without our being able to change it. I smoke because it's a habit and it's a hard work to change it. But if that work is towards consciousness, then it's not for naught. It's a very powerful means of raising awareness. And like I was just saying, Maurice Nicoll is saying to his pupils, who they obviously had a farm in Essex where they would get together and do the work, and many people would identify, this is a term that will come up in Search the Miraculous, they would identify with the farm, that the farm is the work. They go to the farm and that's where they work. And when they're at home, they're just unconscious. They just continue mechanically, and then they go to the farm and they do their work. And I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but I used to go to a farm myself, a farm called Bray, close to, goodness me, where on earth was it? Close to Windsor, a farm, and also several other houses where people would go, everyone interested in the work would go and be together and share their experiences and try to be present at this particular moment. But yes, it's people can just get comfortable going to the farm and sort of see the act of going to the farm as their work. Just that they got there is enough work for them, and then they can fall asleep after. But the fourth way is so powerful, and Gurdjieff's ideas, because we can use them in life, and it doesn't matter what you're doing or how, boring, that's what a lot of kids like to say, and but it's boring. If you study the ideas in the work and in Search of the Miraculous and all the other various canon, all the books, nothing's ever boring, because just the very act of being alive, like he was saying there, man number 4, or number 4 man, Maurice Nicoll likes to call it, but we'll come to all that later on in Search of the Miraculous. When you sort of raise your consciousness, when you become self-conscious, Ouspensky was saying, there's sleep, there's waking consciousness, then there's self-consciousness, and then there's objective consciousness, which would be like gnosis in the Hermetic tradition. Once you achieve these things, and in the Bhagavad Gita it also says that the true yogi, it doesn't matter whether he's working or sleeping or meditating or eating or making love, it's all the same. It's only the dualistic mind that thinks good, bad, dark, light, hot, cold, all of these things is sort of a lower frame of consciousness. And so when we begin to practice the fourth way ideas, we can do it in life. And it's very interesting what technology has allowed now. I'm not sure if I would consider this a group. Maybe we'd need to formulate a group more, what word am I looking for? More, there's no word I can think of. We would need to formulate a group on some different terms and in a different framework. But the fact that I'm able to read these passages from the workbooks, answer any questions that one may have, and continue to work through the Gurdjieff canon, I think it's amazing. I think it's amazing that I can sit here on my sofa, do a bit of post-production and get all the text ready and read it to you, and then we can discuss, and you can ask questions if you have any. It's quite intense, those few passages. Maybe I've made a bit of a mistake in sharing them as introductions, because it can maybe turn people off the ideas. But the idea is that it's not easy. Ouspensky was saying in his passage, the idea of evolution occurring mechanically is, according to Gurdjieff's ideas, it's a fallacy. You can't, humanity can't evolve without conscious efforts. And this is another term that stayed with me for all of my studies. We have to make efforts. It's an effort. If we set off in Buddhism, they have walking meditation, right? I don't know if any of you know anything about Buddhism, but there's a very serious practice in Buddhism. It's called walking meditation. And you could say that this is similar to making an effort in the fourth way or the work. So you can just walk to the shops or walk to work or walk wherever you're walking. You can walk anywhere, even around your garden, the Buddhists would say. But I suppose this is just an example from my own experience. You can walk to the shop and be daydreaming, associating, thinking about what your colleague said yesterday, the argument with your partner this morning, what you're going to do at the weekend, and just be off in your mind. You're not even, where are you? Yes, you're walking along, but your mind is completely preoccupied with all of these thoughts and associations and imaginations and plans. Or, alternatively, your mind can be very still, and you can be completely aware of how your body feels, you know, the breeze on your arms and your face, the sound of the trees or whatever's about, the awareness of each foot moving and progressing and how your body's progressing, what you can see. And this is completely different. These are completely different states of consciousness, as again we will learn as we progress through In Search of the Miraculous. But I thought I would share that beginning and introductory material because these are the books that have helped me understand them. Again, maybe there was too much terminology and too much specialist language in there for an introduction. So I apologize if I've sort of turned you off from the study. But when we come to the book, like I say, the first chapter is very easily accessible because it's just very biographical, and hopefully that will settle people in. And hello there, Attitude Customs. I haven't done a kickflip for a long while, but I reckon I've still got one. So yes, before we go, guys, if you've got any questions or comments, even just a comment about the readings, or again a question, I'll answer it now. And I think I'll I'm gonna do some other content in between the readings, just what comes to me, and condensing further that information into a video that doesn't really have any of that complicated and complex new terminology, layman's terms, as they would say. But yeah, that's all from me. Unless you guys have any questions or comments, we'll call it a night, and we should all rewatch all of that material over and over again and try and digest it. Okay, well, there doesn't seem to be any queries, inquiries, or comments, so here we go. Bit of bants, it looks like. Number 4 man can do a kickflip if the occasion calls for it. Yes, I'm sure he can, but again, he would need to work and practice for it, right? I don't think any man can just read a book about a kickflip, and this is an interesting, although it's a bit of bants here from Attitude Customs. It's no good reading a book about kickflips. It's no good watching videos. It's no good watching Braille skateboarding tutorials to do a kickflip. One has to get on the skateboard and practice. Try. You keep trying. Then you might get close. And then the belief comes more stronger. Maybe I can do it. You keep going. Then all of a sudden you get really close. And then it's like, I'm right there. And so this is an interesting analogy, isn't it? Maybe not many of you are skateboarders out there, but to do a skateboarding trick, it takes a lot of time and effort. And again, you have to think about it all the time. You have to be trying all the time, and then maybe you'll get it once. But to then solidify the trick, and I hope I'm not losing everyone with this analogy. So then you do it once, you land it. It's called in skateboarding. You land your trick, and that brings a great feeling of joy and exuberance because you've done it. You've been working very hard and you've done it. But then do it again. What's it they say, Matt? What's the phrase? Two to make it true, I think, in the skateboarding thingy. You have to do 2 to make it true, and then the next goal would be to establish that trick so that you can do it all the time. And that's more effort, more practice, more failures. And I think this is a perfect analogy, and this is like what Ouspensky was saying, or maybe Jacob Needleman in the earlier video, that the Enneagram, anything can be placed onto the Enneagram to help with our understanding. And like Attitude Customs, my friend there, is talking about kickflips, we can use kickflips as an analogy. We could use anything, I believe, as an analogy for the work of raising consciousness, because in a sense, as important as a kickflip is, I don't feel it's as important as, waking up, raising consciousness, not reacting to life in a mechanical way. And so, thank you for that. Attitude Customs. Thank you for your comment. I appreciate all the comments, questions, and super chats particularly. And so it looks like that's it for this evening. If you do think of any questions or comments, feel free to, or please do put them in the chat when the video goes live and it's on the channel, and then you can add normal comments and I'll get round to answering all of them. Because for me, I feel that this work is very important, especially in this time. Like it said, excuse me, I'm not going to be able to find the passage, but it says in these, maybe I will try and find it because I'm rambling away, and Attitude Customs is coming through with the questions, and I appreciate that. I'm going to answer that in a moment. Yeah, here it says, I'll just read this passage from the second part, and then I'll get to Attitude Customs question. It says, we have to speak on the small scale of ourselves, but the point is that we are, even on this small scale, trying to follow the fourth way, which comes down into external life always when there is a period of special disorder and chaos. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm seeing a fair bit of disorder and chaos in the world at this moment. But this brings us to, I'm going to say Matt, because I think it is Matt. And he says, seriously though, how has the fourth way positively impacted your approach to daily life? And so for me, it sort of, in a nutshell, it sort of makes everything better, because if you're more conscious, the more conscious you are, in a sense, the more alive you are. And the more alive you are, the more you can take in life. If you're, just again, some more analogies, if you're hungover, if you're depressed, if you're anxious, you're not fully open to life. You can't take in all of the joys that life has to offer, all of the wonders. Whereas if you're in top physical shape, top mental shape, and you've been doing your meditations or mindfulness or consciousness practice, or your self-remembering, self-observation in a fourth way perspective, then even just a walk around the park can bring immense joy, immense sort of connection to all of life. You see these people might think they're a nutter, and I would in my younger years, some nutter standing there in the park, just observing a leaf or something, and you think, look at that nutter, looking at the leaves, talking to the trees even. But if you're in a higher state of consciousness, then who knows what they're experiencing, and we don't know what anyone's experiencing. But I'll be honest with you guys, like I will try and be all the way through this. It's not easy. It's sort of quite, I don't know if depressing is probably a too strong a word, but it's first I had to realize how asleep I was, because the ego, upon first reading all of these ideas, wants to say, oh, that's not me. That's not me. I'm not asleep. He's talking about all the rest of the people. I'm awake. I'm already man number 4. I don't need to do those things. But if we continue to observe ourselves and see how little we are conscious, then, it's very painful. But then maybe you have a day where you're more conscious, where your partner is rude, or your partner criticizes something about you, and instead of reacting automatically like you would always react, there's a sort of space, there's a gap between the impression of the information, the criticism, and the reaction. And the space, the gap, allows you that consciousness, that awareness, not to just, and give it back, but to say, okay, and maybe there is some truth in your criticism. I'll consider that over the evening and moving forward, and I'll do my best to try and remedy whatever the criticism might be. Whereas if you're in sleep, reacting, criticism comes and you just criticize them back. Oh yeah, but you do this, don't you? You do this and that. And that's an automatic response, right? So the very fact that you don't react automatically to life, or I should say it better, you react less automatically to life, and maybe for a moment you can react consciously, even in a very negative, dark situation, in a workplace, even in life. If you live in London, life can be troublesome at times. If you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, it can be quite dangerous. And I'm sure that this is the same in any part of the world, right? Wrong place, wrong time. It behooves us to be more aware, to see things going on in our peripheral visions, to sort of take a snapshot of everything going on, of all the characters and everything, in an intuitive way, not or not left brain, how many people and what do they all look like, but a more right brain, intuitive awareness. So I hope that's answered your question about how it's positively impacted my life. And I will say how deeply I went into the ideas initially without really considering what it would do to my character, my personality. I would have a lot of friends at work. I'd say thankfully I was in a good position, my life circumstance, that I didn't have a sort of mental break because it's very powerful and we have to stay grounded. And so nostalgic development says, it's ironic the gap would seem to delay presence, but it may actually be the conduit to it. So yeah, that's a very good point there. And yes, that gap is the difference. I don't know if any of you have meditated, but if you meditate consistently, and this comes to this gap, yeah. If you've never meditated and you've never done any sort of mindfulness practice, you've never experienced this gap that nostalgic development's speaking about, then you have no idea what it is. And this isn't preach mode, I'm just giving my experience of what I experienced from my meditation. If you've never done any meditation, you consider every thought that comes into your mind as you identify with your thoughts. Oh, chocolate biscuit, I'll go and get one. Oh, another cigarette, you have one. Oh, this, oh, that. There's no gaps between the thought and the reaction to that thought. But when you're meditating, the very basic, simple instructions for meditation are, sit quietly, close your eyes, and watch your thoughts. So you'll sit down, you'll close your eyes, and you'll be paying attention to the blackness of your eyelids and your bodily sensations. And then all of a sudden, some random thought will just jump in. And you'll think, whoa, where did that come from? We think that we think our thoughts, that we're in control of our mind. But that's not the case. And anyone who's done even 10 minutes of meditation will observe that the gap is, it's a powerful thing to see that our thoughts, we don't have to identify with them. We don't have to associate with them and be led with them. In meditation, an interesting thought comes in. Normally the thoughts are sort of, the shallow thoughts will be about something that's happened yesterday, something that's occurring later in the day or tomorrow. And then you'll just go off with that. That thought will come in, you'll hop on it, and then you'll just be off thinking for 5 or 10 minutes. I been getting back into my meditation practice, and I joke with some of the people that I would associate with and still do, but I would say, oh yeah, I sit down and I do this bit of recitation and that, and then I'll just think for 10 minutes, because that's honestly, that's what's happening. I'm just sitting there thinking, and then is very helpful actually to do 10 minutes of just quiet sitting meditation, because you can condense a lot of impressions into just 10 minutes, and it's very powerful to take it away for your day. So I think that's all, unless there's any more questions. And it's lovely to see Nostalgic Development and Attitude Customs, because yeah, it's great to see you guys. And as always, Green Grapes, Audrey, Ashira, it's fantastic to have you. And so I hope this last 20 minutes or so, me rambling away, it's much more helpful for me to get a question and then to sort of answer that, rather than just think, oh, what's the most important bits from all those texts? How can I condense that into a 10-minute video and share it? Because, well, it might be what I consider the most important and interesting bits, but you might not be a damn bit interested in what I'm saying. So questions are important for me to formulate ideas, and for anyone, for the asker to to have them clarified somewhat. So yeah, this has been great. The inception of our study into In Search of the Miraculous, and we haven't even started studying it yet, have we? We're just doing the introductory material, and so it's great to have you all here sharing it with me. And again, I read this book very often anyway, so I would be reading it anyway, but it's all the more special to have you all along for the journey. And yeah, when we come to some of the practices, some of the instructions, of course I'll speak about that more fully, and we can discuss in some comments or over at Patreon if you want to come and join Patreon. But that's all for now, guys. I hope you've enjoyed and benefited from that. And yeah, some food for thought, right? Whether it be the gap, whether it be our automatic responses to life. You know, we can start observing these things even now from the text. Do you react a certain way every time to a colleague? Do you, every time your partner makes a comment, react the same way? Do you, every morning when you wake up, react the same way and feel bad about that? You know, it's not just about raising consciousness. We can become better people in life, at the very least, and at the max become man number 8. Believe it or not, Attitude Customs, man number 8 is the man with objective consciousness, but that's not for that's just theoretical at the moment. We mustn't get carried away. So guys, thanks again. I'll be reading something very different on Sunday evening, Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator, so something a little lighter and equally as enjoyable. So that's coming for Sunday evening's live read, and next week Thursday we will read chapter 1, again very biographical, from Ouspensky, and I cannot wait to share that with you. So thanks all again for sharing this with me. Have a great week and stay conscious, stay awake. Or I think Russell Brand says stay awake, so I can't say stay awake. So I'll have to think of a little catchphrase, a little bit of rhetoric that I can keep saying over and over to hopefully hypnotize us into raising our consciousness. But I'm rambling on, and I'm going to say bye. So I'll see you guys soon on Sunday if you can make it, or next week Thursday for chapter 1. Take care, guys. See you.